good evening, or good morning, or good afternoon, or whatever time you should be watching this. This is going to be a lecture on the big book, the 3 chapters, how it works, into action, and I can't remember the third one. I'll have to look at the PowerPoint, which we're about to do now. But I wanted to once again reinforce to you guys that I'm not speaking as an expert on or for AA. I'm just talking about what's covered in their text. This isn't a big book study per se, it's just covering the chapters. I guess it is kind of a big book study, but I'm not trying to indoctrinate anyone one way or another. I'm just providing information. And again, as addiction professionals working out there in the field, you're going to have an opportunity to interact with people who are in 12-step programs, who you may be sending people to 12-step programs. You may be a member of a 12-step program. So this is going to be a factor in your professional life either way you jump, so you should know a little something about it. And to that end, we're going to talk some more about what's in the big book, this book that was written in 1939 and serves as a pattern for everything that AA has done since. How it works into action and working with others is the chapter I couldn't remember, and I should, but I didn't. So it's been a long day. It's not over yet, but we're getting there. So that's what we're doing. How it works. Well, this is a good chapter because when all else fails, we should read the directions, huh? And anyone who's ever attended AA meetings has heard about how it works because AA does some ritualistic stuff. And at the beginning of every meeting, they're going to proceed in the same manner every time that a meeting opens. And one of the things that happens when a meeting opens, a moment of silence or a prayer, and the serenity prayer and how it works, etc. So someone's asked to read how it works, and they do. Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. Those who've attended AA meetings for any length of time are very familiar with that phrase because it sets... Oh, sorry, I yawned. Couldn't stop that. It starts, how it works includes 2 key concepts that everything else is built on. One is rigorous honesty, and rigorous honesty in terms of self-examination, me looking at me, you looking at you. And then the 12 steps. And the 12 steps are a program. They're a program of preparation and execution. You get ready to do something, you do it. You get ready to do something, you do it. And you practice these principles in all your affairs. What that means, and practice in the way a person practices is taking grounders at shortstop. You do it and do it and do it and do it every day, time after time, until you make something that's really hard to do look really easy. That's what a program's about, and that's what the 12 steps are about. They're a pattern. They're something that they're a template. They're a guide. They're an instruction book. You do them over and over. Step 1, you surrender to win. We admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. This is kind of a hard step for people to swallow from time to time. No one likes to come in and admit that they're different from other people. No one likes to come in and say, I have a problem that I can't do anything about, that I'm at my wit's end, that I don't know how to handle it. It's embarrassing. It's for some of us, it feels demeaning. I know personally, when I first went to AA and started hearing this stuff, I was delighted. Yeah, right. I felt like I'd been sent to a leper colony that was peopled by losers, and I was one of them. I was not happy to be there. I wasn't happy of what that meant for me. I'm happier now, but at the time, not so much. But I have to do that, and that's the step that your sponsors, your counselors, and whatnot will tell you early on. This is the step that you have to do perfectly. This is the one that if you don't do this one, then the other 11 isn't, is irrelevant, are irrelevant. That you can't, if you don't stay sober, then there's no point to doing any of the others. And to stay sober, you have to admit that you're powerless. You have to stop struggling to control your drinking because you can't control it, is basically what that means. Step 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. This was a toughie. Is a toughie. That means there are a couple of implications here. But step 2, one of the things that you can't get around is that if you take this step, you're really looking at a spiritual solution to a hopeless state of mind and body, which is what the big book will teach you, what Alcoholics Anonymous will teach you. But there's a spiritual solution to this problem that one has of losing control of their alcohol intake, of not being able to drink like a lady or a gentleman, of consuming more than we intended to, of not being able to predict our behaviors when we drink, of doing crazy things and living in crazy ways too. The insanity of that they're talking about of alcoholism, the insanity of alcohol dependency, doesn't mean the crazy things that you do when you're drinking. Everybody does crazy things when they're drinking. You get the Pope in here and give him a fifth of Jim Beam and a couple of disco biscuits, and he's liable to pinch Reverend Mother on the fanny. But that's because he's drunk. That's not because he lives that way, or this is a pattern of behavior for him. With chemically dependent people, with folks who would fit in well with AA, their crazy behavior is a lifestyle. It's day to day. There's a pattern of it. It's not something that's out of the ordinary. So, first of all, we have to recognize that the way we're living is not sane. It's not, we're not. It's not satisfying. That we need to stop what we're doing to turn our lives around, basically. And if we can't do it ourselves, then we come to AA and we come to believe that there's a power here greater than ourselves that can restore us to sanity. This is a preparation step too. It's not an action step. I come here and I pay attention to what people are saying, and I watch them and I listen to them and I relate to them and I understand that they have been where I am, so that they've traveled the road that I am traveling. And I make a connection with those individuals, and that's the power that can restore us to sanity. We haven't called him God yet. Oops, now we did. Made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. The quest for a power greater than ourselves. And people in the program will tell you, it doesn't have to be Jesus, it doesn't have to be Allah, it doesn't have to be any, you don't have to name a God. It doesn't matter which God it is. It doesn't, What matters is that you acknowledge that you're not the Alpha and Omega of the universe, that there are things greater than you. And this too is a preparation step. Even though it's active in the sense that we make a decision, it's still preparation to do something. So I decide to turn my will and lives over to the care of God as I understand Him, or as I don't understand Him, or whatever God means to me, or whatever higher power means to me. Sound pretty mystical so far? It's really not. Then step 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. That's a toughie. This is a slip step, by the way. You're kind of doing the AA 4-step dance. 1, 2, 3, slip. 1, 2, 3, slip. 1, 2, 3, slip. Because we get to that step 4 and it frightens us. There has been some difficulty with the first 3 steps, but it's nowhere near the difficulty that people will see with the 4th step. This is where you sit down and you write about who you are, and you think about who you are, and you write down some things that you've done, and you think about what it is that you've done, etc. And when you do an inventory, you're looking at what you have, what has to go, what you need to keep. That's how you inventory stuff. And when you're doing a 4-step inventory, you're cleaning up just one side of the street. You can't say, yeah, I was a jerk to my wife, but she, because the but she doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what she did. It doesn't matter if you were provoked. It doesn't matter if you felt justified. What matters is that you recognize the things that you've done. And that's where this rigorous honesty comes in. Of all the people we don't need to cut slack when we're doing an inventory as ourselves. I'm not taking an inventory to beat myself up. That's not what I'm doing. But it does me no good to take an inventory if I'm going to pad my own corners, if I'm going to make justifications for my behavior, if I'm going to alibi myself, or if I'm going to pardon myself a priori before I even look into it. So I have to be somewhat ruthless in self-examination. And that requires courage, because when you're at step 4, there are all kinds of things that can get in the way. Pride tells you don't have to look. Fear tells you damn well better not look. But you have to do this. This is a step that if you want to get well and get better, you have to take. Your AA sponsor will tell you that all day long. And they'll also tell you, don't worry about step 5 when you're at step 4. Step 4 is a step on its own. Just do this one. Just for today. Just do your 4-step inventory. And I've done a few. It requires self-discipline to do this, and it requires some support. We don't like to take these types of looks at ourselves. We don't like to do an honest assessment of who we are. But remember, like Socrates said, an unexamined life is not worth living, right? Oh, it's not. Step 5. This is an action step. Admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. That's an important word, by the way, exact nature of our wrongs. And the exact nature of our wrongs addresses patterns in our lives. It's not necessarily writing down a list of all my transgressions. I can't do that. The first time I did one of these inventories, I was like 32 years old, 33, something like that. And if it took me 33 years to do the stuff, how long would it take me to write about it? To list them all. And besides, as a very enthusiastic consumer of intoxicants, both of alcohol and other recreational substances, there's a bunch of stuff I couldn't remember and don't remember to this day. And I probably ought to thank God for that. But in any case, what I did, writing down a list of sins, is it doesn't have to be perfect, but it has to be in the ballpark, and it has to be honest. That's the main thing. I don't want to exclude things that I know should be in there and pretend to anyone, a sponsor or whomever I'm doing my fifth step with, that I forgot about them, or then I'll see something there and I'll minimize it, try to make myself look good to whomever I'm doing this with. So rigorous honesty, once again, and it's rigorous honesty for my benefit. It's not for the benefit of other people. And I've done some inventory, some fifth steps with people. I have done my own fifth steps with someone else, and I've had other people do their fifth steps with me. And I'm perfectly safe in saying none of us have done it all, but all of us have done it. So there's not a lot there that is or will be shocking usually to the person you're doing this with. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it is vital to know yourself and to know the exact nature of your wrongs. The exact nature of my wrongs usually fall under the 7 deadlies, greed, avarice, lust, envy, that kind of thing. And those are the things that drive me, and my patterns of behavior reveal that those are the natures of my wrongs. It's not so much what I did, but why I did it. What drives me to do that kind of thing, and why do I repeat it? When I do this, I understand myself better, and I understand what the nature of my wrongs are, and they're usually instincts that are off base. They're usually a driving behavior that's off base, and that can be corrected. Step 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. If you're working with your sponsor, they will move you from 4th, 5th into the 6th step, and they'll be paying attention. Are you getting ready to stop? Are you ready? That's what this step is. Are you ready to have God remove these defects of character? And many times the answer is no. St. Augustine, a saint, for goodness sakes, prayed to be a saint. But his prayer, the prayer of St. Augustine, was, "Dear God, make me a saint, but not today. Somewhere in the future, when I'm old and can't chase women anymore, when, I don't get a kick out of partying any longer, when I'm no longer interested in the sins of the flesh," and God knows when that'll be, but, make me a saint. So you prepare. You acknowledge your shortcomings. And it's harder than it sounds, because change can feel like dying. Because I'm giving up old parts of me, even if this new part of me is something fulfilling and wonderful and beautiful. For every butterfly that's born, a caterpillar has to die, and that's the way it is. And so when you're changing these aspects of yourself, then the old you has to go into the rear view, and the new you has to emerge from the chrysalis. Step 7 is another action step. This is where, having prepared yourself, said, okay, this is what I want to do, then you humbly ask him to remove our shortcomings. I balked like a son of a gun at this step because I didn't believe in God, and I felt really silly doing things like humbly asking something I don't believe in to remove my shortcomings. It felt silly. But it's more about surrendering to win. And I've certainly done sillier things in my life. And as my friend Buzz told me, I don't need to know who God is, I need to know who He's not. And I'm the one that needs the humility. So I humbly ask Him to remove my shortcomings. And that was my personal experience with this step. Other people have real transformational responses to this. Many people who come into AA are people of faith. And it may be of a burned faith that they feel let down by God, and sometimes they judge themselves so harshly that they don't believe that if there were a God out there, that He could actually care about them or forgive them or any of that kind of thing. So the struggle is a struggle with our identity, it's a struggle with our addictions, it's a struggle with the way we live our lives, it's a struggle with our spirituality and how we connect to things that are beyond us, and we struggle, and we fight, and we suffer, and we lose, till we surrender. And then once we surrender, we win. Sounds a little odd, huh? That's the purpose of that step. Step 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. Again, a preparation step. It's got some action to it because you're making a list, but you're drawing that list from your inventory, really, and and there are things right around you. You can, most of us don't have to look hard to find a list of people that we've wronged. But we have to acknowledge that we were wrong, you know. I sold him some dope, but, if I hadn't sold it to him, somebody else would. It's not my fault he OD'd, that kind of thing. Well, I cheated on her, but, she'd have cheated on me too. We do all kinds of justifications and excuses and qualifiers to make our what they are. They're passes. And we'll study ethics in another class. But when you're studying ethics, the passes are the get out of responsibility free cards that we give ourselves. And I give myself all kinds of get out of responsibilities free. So I have to remove my qualifiers. I have to make sure that, I'm cleaning up my side of the street. And I have to be rigorously honest about, who I've harmed and be willing to make amends to them all. In short, I have to acknowledge that there's a bill due, that I owe an apology. And that's why you really make an apology, ladies and gentlemen. You don't do it. I mean, you can do it to get sober and to lead a life of sobriety and to recover like AA teaches. But for the most part, you make an apology because you owe an apology. You acknowledge that the bill is due, and then you pay the damn bill. That's what you do. That's how it works. Made direct amends to such people possible, wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. This is an action step. This is paying the bill. I have to be careful because I don't want to hurt other people. I don't have a right to feel better at the expense of other people. And I also don't want to lead with the chin and get myself hurt. This step requires courage, honesty, humility, and acceptance. And you have to be very careful with the expectations of forgiveness, acceptance. Just because you make the apology doesn't mean that people will accept it. Just because you say, I'm sorry, forgive me, that doesn't mean that they will. And so you have to be careful with your expectations. I forgive other people for me, for the most part. It's good for them too. I understand that too. But I forgive them for me because I don't want to carry around the anger and resentment that I'd otherwise carry around. It's injurious to me. When you go to AA meetings and you hear people in a step study, for instance, talk about this step, the more modern interpretations of it include ourselves. So they'll say, well, make direct amends to such people whenever possible, and except when to do so would injure them, ourselves, or others. And that's an addendum. That's not part of the step. Sometimes we do things that can cause ourselves consequences. You'll encounter this as a counselor from time to time. Should I? I've got a client that comes in, and he says, I cheated on my wife. And I feel horrible about that. I got drunk. I was messing around with somebody. One thing led to another thing. We had sex, and I cheated on her. And that's bad enough. But this person I cheated with was her cousin and one of her best friends, and I feel real bad about that. So I want to come clean. I want to go tell her I did this. I want to tell her, who I did it with and stuff. You have to be careful how you advise people to do such things. Other people could be tremendously injured by this coming clean. It's enough, maybe, that our guy comes clean with us and that we talk about it. If he's truly repentant, so to speak, maybe just not doing it again is the amends that he makes to his wife. Maybe the being relentlessly faithful is the amends that he makes to his wife. Maybe the not drinking and not putting himself in that situation again is the amends that he makes to his wife. It could be more, and if he does have to come clean with her, perhaps it's best that he just tell her that he was unfaithful and not tell her who he was unfaithful with and how and when, because that hurts her and that hurts other people. Yeah, but Bushhart, rigorous honesty. Yeah, well, rigorous honesty is good, and knowing, what the circumstances were. But knowing something about someone doesn't necessarily mean I should be running around saying something about someone. You feel me? If I know a truth about you, why would I say that if all it will do is just hurt you? I mean, if nothing good comes of that truth, why would I say that? Take it upon my own to say that. I shouldn't. And people will say horrible things about someone and cause all kinds of chaos in their life, and then when they're called on the carpet for it, they'll say, well, it's true. And that may be so, but, should you do that? If someone hands you a stick and says, hit me with it, maybe they've given you an opening and given you a stick, but it's still on you, the responsibility for hitting them with it. So we have to be careful with the expectations of forgiveness and acceptance and who else is involved. It's just our part that we're trying to clean up. It's just our part that we're, trying to make amends with. I've had to tell people, think about what you're doing. You've stole money from the company and got away with it. Now you want to go tell them, I stole money from you and I want to make amends. Be sure what you want to do there. There are several options for you. if you successfully snuck money out of the company, maybe you can successfully sneak it back in. But then again, maybe you'll get caught. If you want to go and tell your boss, I stole from you and I'd like to make it okay, you might be prepared for any of the consequences. A boss might say, well, I really admire your honesty and, all of that good stuff, but I'm about to file charges on your ass, so get ready to go to jail, Or, oh, yeah, well, you're fired, and get out of here. There are all kinds of responses that you could get. So, leading with the chin may not be the best idea. You want to get it off of your chest. You want to make amends. And that's where sponsors and things come in on how to best make direct amends without hurting anyone else, including yourself. Step 10. We continue to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. Two things. One is, well, okay, but promptly can be an awfully subjective term. I don't know how many minutes is promptly, hours, days, or years before we get around to saying, all right, I was wrong. But taking personal inventory and continuing to look at your activities, continuing to examine yourself on a daily basis is important for the programmatic part of recovery, of training yourself to question motivations, training yourself to examine outcomes, training yourself to correct mistakes as soon as you recognize them. And that's a happy thing. You want to be as free from owing for owing apologies, amends, or whatever to people as much as you can. That's part of freedom, right? So, once upon a time, I may have shared this with you in another context, I don't know, but there was a story about St. Francis of Assisi, who was Brother Francis at the time, and he was working with another Franciscan brother out in the garden of the monastery, and the brother asked him, said, St. Francis, what would you do if it was your last day on earth? And St. Francis didn't even hesitate to think about it. He said, I'd finish hoeing the garden. And this is a biggie. There's a big truth in there. Living your life in such a way that when it is your last day on earth, you don't have to drop things and go somewhere and say, I love you, or I'm sorry, or, any of that. That your relationships with other people are good, that your relationship with your higher power is good, but more importantly, your relationship with yourself is good, so that your conscience is clean and you can leave in such a way as you don't have to stop and do anything. I'd really like to go out that way, but as life goes, I'll probably go out the same way I came in, kicking and screaming, probably naked. But anyway, there's something to shoot for, eh? Step 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out, which is somewhat presumptive on the part of the writers of the Big Book. But again, this is preparation step. We're trying to get ready to create a scenario where we can get something out of this spiritual program that we're involved in, if you happen to be in a 12-step program. The prayer is talking to God. The meditation aspect is listening to God. This slows things down. It creates a deliberate speed. It creates a self-conscious approach to living. Think. Our first impulse is generally not a good one sometimes when we're faced with circumstances or situations. If we have time to step back a little bit, we can make a better decision. And step 12 is having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. This is an action step. That's why it's a program. You go from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Repeat. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Repeat. And you do these steps time after time, day after day. And that's why it's a program. You practice these principles by employing these principles, but you practice these principles primarily by repeating them until they're second nature, until they're automatic. I don't know if you ever want to really get so automatic that you don't think about it anymore, but it's one day at a time, 1 foot at a time, 1 step at a time. And sometimes, you backslide, but you don't stop. It's not the end of the world because you didn't do something perfectly. You get back up and you go again. That's that serenity prayer, right? God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. That's some tough stuff there. The Lord's Prayer, if you break it down and really look at what you're asking for, that's some tough stuff there. You're asking for a real challenge in your life. And for a lot of us, we're used to doing the short form of the Serenity Prayer, which is I screw it, and on with something else. But we practice these principles in all our affairs, in our relationships with other people at work, romantic relationships, relationships with children, relationships with God, relationships with self, interactions, whether we're buying a car or, coaching a little league team or whatever we're doing, all of our affairs, we try to be adherents to the principles of rigorous honesty. We try to be adherents to the practice of compassion and acceptance and integrity, etc. One of the things that I learned in a 12-step program, and I didn't ask for it, I'll tell you why, because I didn't want it, and that was responsibility. But a thing I hadn't learned yet at that time, and I did learn, and I do know now, is that freedom and responsibility are two sides of the same coin. You can't have one without the other. I have to have responsibility for the things that I do and the things that I choose. And I can't say this was done to me, because it wasn't. It was me. That's enough of self-confession and self-flagellation, right? What an order. I can't go through with it. Sure we can. Our troubles, we think, and the quotes that you see, and many of these are quotes that I've put up here, are from the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous that was published in 1939, and still has copyrights on it. But so the quotes that I've used come from the big book for the most part, unless I otherwise attribute them. Our troubles, we think, are basically of our own making. That's from the big book, and largely they are. It's things that I do, have done, and have caught up with me, or whatever, that causes me most of my problems. And I've come to the conclusion a long time ago that if other people did to me what I did to me at any point in my life, I'd probably kill them. It's but it wasn't other people doing to me. It was mostly me. I don't have to know who God is if I remember who he isn't. I got that from Buzz B. How it works feels very religious, that chapter, as the steps are explained. Chapter 6, the into action feels very religious. And working with others to a large extent feels very religious. And I addressed this early on with people who were telling me, no, it's not religious, it's a spiritual program. Well, it feels religious to me, and I grew up, going to Baptist church, so I ought to know what religious feels like. We'll get into that. Resentment is the number one offender that leads us into relapse and not liking what we're doing. Sentere is Latin. It means to feel. In English, to feel again, bitterness, indignation, resent. To feel again, to re-feel what we felt before. If I were to tell you to close your eyes and sit still for 2 minutes and think of the most shameful experience you've ever felt in your life, you won't have to reach far to reach it. You won't have to reach far to feel that shame again. Your face will begin to get hot. You know what shame feels like. You know what humiliation or fear or whatever feels like. And once again, we begin to feel bitterness, indignation, blame, anger, self-loathing, all kinds of things that can lead us into drinking again. This becomes important with AA members because sometimes, or people in any kind of recovery group really, when I get tired of being sober and I get bored of going to meetings and I get tired of sharing with people, and as one person told me one time, I'm sick of living my life by committee and having other people tell me, how I'm supposed to be feeling or what I'm supposed to be doing. We build a case against the program. We build a case against the 12 steps, AA members, sponsors, friends, etc. And once again, we have bitterness, indignation, anger, envy, all of those, things that are deadly to us, and we go out and relapse. So this is the purpose of having a program that you practice on a daily basis, is to avoid this type of situation, to avoid building a case against your own recovery and the people who are helping you and going back out and getting high again. One of the best ways to avoid that is to go into action, 5th step forward, and do something. Into action describes the alcoholic as an actor, as the person who wants to, write the play, play all the parts, arrange the set, block the stage, work the lights, raise the curtain, and do it all themselves, and they can't. We become pretenders. We try to project something that we are not. We don't want people to know who we really are, and so I do a lot of pretending. When I get to AA, I start with pretense in 12-step recovery. I learn how to speak program speak. I learn how to speak recovery speak. If you threw me off in China and just, flew me over and threw me out of an airplane into some part of China where no one speaks English, I'd be forced to learn Chinese. I'd have to. I'd have to have that to get a job, to work, to pay my rent, to buy my food, to go to a doctor, to, turn my lights on. So when I go into a program, I began to learn the jargon so I can speak 12-step speak and that sort of thing. I am not quite committed usually at that time, but it's all right. I'll follow people around. I act as if, and that's important sometimes in recovery. Act as if you're there already. Act as if you know what you're doing. But I have no internal frame of reference at that point. I don't really know who I am or why I am or what I am. I look at other people and guess at what normal is. I'll say, well, look at Dave P. over there. He looks like he's got it together. I want to be like him. And look at Carrie L. over there. This is how he handles that situation. And man, I wish I could be as chill as, Debbie B, because she just never lets anything bother her. I look at other people and say, I'd like to be like that. And if you want to be like that, be like that. Fake it till you make it. Do it until it comes natural. That's what programming is. Very often the behavior that I'm mimicking, the behavior that I'm trying to, that other people are modeling for me, and they're modeling it whether they know it or not, and I'm trying to adapt it, even though it may not be honest initially. It can be. It will turn that way. Faith without works is dead. I've always liked that expression. But into action is where you begin to put some of this faith into action. This lovely lady that you see here on your screen is the poet Anne Sexton. She's a terrific writer. You ought to look her up and read some of her poetry. It's beautiful. Anne Sexton says, dead drunk is the term I think of, insensible, neither cool nor warm, without a head or a foot. To be drunk is to be intimate with a fool. And boy, can I relate to that remark. You want to move away from being intimate with a fool. And the one way that you can find to do that, or a way that you can find to do that, and it's a most effective way, is to acknowledge that fool and get to know that fool and see what makes that fool tick. Wait a minute, Bushart, how am I going to feel good about myself if I keep referring to myself as a fool? All of us are fools, dear hearts, just in one way or another. But we don't have to stay that way, to look at our foolishness. I just almost made you an assignment, but I'm not. Instead, I'm going to post something for you to read. It's called The Fool's Prayer, and you can read it, and it's about self-awareness. But anyway, I'll post that for you when I post this. Of tornadoes and wreckage and into action. What a chaotic, destructive, messed up, relationship killing, health mangling, social misfitting life we live when we're in our cups, when we're out there doing what we do with our alcohol and with our other drugs and the way that we behave, etc., and so forth. And in the chapter Into Action, they relate the story of a farmer who comes up out of the cyclone cellar with his wife to find that his farmhouse is blown away. The farm is destroyed. The crops are ruined. The sheep are dead. The cows are dead. They're hanging in trees. The chickens have blown away, total destruction. And he looks around and smiles at his wife and says, "Nothing wrong here. Ain't it grand the wind stopped blowing?" Well, the alcoholic, the chemically dependent, the person who's here for recovery is the tornado. We are the destructive force that blows through our own lives, and through the lives of people who are close to us and around us, and through the lives of people who don't even know us sometimes. We create destruction everywhere we go. We tear things up. We mess things up. And I'm not doing a mea culpa, mea culpa, mea culpa here. I'm not doing self-flagellation. I'm acknowledging the obvious. I'm saying this is because it is. And when the wind stops blowing, it's time to come out of the cellar and start repairing the damage. Start fixing what you can fix. This is how you clear the way for the future, is by removing the wreckage of the past and rebuilding on good foundations so that you can have a satisfying life ahead of you. And if you can, repairing the relationships that you've damaged. Sometimes we can't. I mean, very often, we have done damages to people, and you'll discover this as you're working as a counselor. You may have a couple come in that are trying to get sober and repair their marriage and things, and it'll become clear to you along the way that there's nothing left to repair. There's been so much damage, so much hurt feelings, so much mistrust. There's nothing left to build on. There's no good feelings there. And so that often when that's the case, we're really presiding over the end of something. I can't remember who the country singer was that did the song "Holding On to Nothing." Why do we keep holding on with nothing left to hold on to? Let's be honest with each other. It's the least that we can do. And we see that. But, often people who clean up in time will have an opportunity to repair the relationships that have been damaged through the addiction. Man, I've got my phone sitting on the desk next to me, and Monsieur Google is eavesdropping and asking me how he can help me find a cleaning service to clean up stuff. Wouldn't that be nice? I don't have to clean up my own wreckage. I can just Google it. The promises into action when you start doing the things you're supposed to do, working the fifth step, sixth step, moving forward, doing the actions that before we're halfway through, these promises will be there. We're going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. We will not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. Now that's a big one. Oh my goodness, that's a big one. What do you mean I can't regret the past? I regret so much of the past. I so wish that I could go back and do things differently. Well, you can't, and the past is what makes you who you are now. And we make peace with the past. We don't get rid of it. We don't dump it. We don't any of that. We make peace with it, which is all we can do, because we cannot change what has transpired in its history now. And I've been asked a few times, when I do a speaking presentation or something like that, or I'm talking to a group, they'll say, well, if you could go back, which you can't. But anytime I hear that phrase, if you could go back, I'm pretty sure what's coming next is, what would you change? How would you do things differently? And the answer is, I'm not as bad a person as I thought I was. Given my circumstances, at any point in my life, I tried to do the right or the best thing almost all the time, you know. Given what I knew, I made the choices that seemed best to me at that moment. If I were to go back to when I started getting high when I was 17 years old, and I knew, I didn't know any more than I know now, that I didn't know if I couldn't carry any knowledge back with me, dear hearts, I would do the same things exactly the same way, because I wouldn't know how to not do them that way. Does that make sense? So part of growing and learning is knowing how to do things the right way, knowing what the right choices are. I'm not going to regret the past because I've learned from the past, and I have changed because of the past. It's driven me to make some choices. What's the thing that made you choose to be sober, Bush? Right? Pain, dear hearts. Pain made me do it. Things hurt. And for a while I could medicate, my pain, my guilt, my fears, and things like that. But there came a time when the drugs and the alcohol stopped working, and so I hurt when I was sober, and I hurt when I was loaded, and I was afraid when I was sober, and I was afraid when I was loaded. I was unhappy when I was straight. I was unhappy when I was loaded. And that's when I got to the right spot, came into a 12-step program, picked up a desire chip and said, help me, and things got better from there. We will comprehend the word serenity, and we'll know peace. When it's our last day on earth, we can continue to hoe our gardens. No matter how far down the scale we've gone, we will see how our experience can benefit others. And there's much truth to that, and that's where the service aspect of AA comes in. That my experiences are something I can take to another person and help them recover. And you remember in a previous discussion I talked about Carney Mary, who started the first women's halfway house in Houston, and she said, I preached to my girls and I was hard on them because, and I told them, you might be the only big book that someone else ever reads. You've got to walk the walk. You've got to be the program, so that other people can see it. And if that's what you're doing and that's how you're living, then the feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. You'll see a purpose for yourself. We will lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows. I probably shouldn't tell you this on like the third date, but I'm going to anyway. Once upon a time, back in the early 80s, I found out that my wife had cheated on me with this guy. And it had happened a year or two before, but it was hot off the presses for me. And so I made this discovery, and it really kind of put me over the edge. I called the guy out, and, smacked him around a little bit, and disappeared from home for a while. And when I talked to my sponsor, I was really distraught. I didn't get high. I don't know how that happened that I didn't get high. In fact, I remained sober. But anyway, I wound up at an AA club, and my sponsor came down there to see me, and we spent the evening together talking and drinking coffee and listening to me bitch and rage. And I told him, I hate those MFs. I hate them. I ought to kill both those bastards and bury them side by side in the backyard, for togetherness purpose. I was not a happy boy. But I told him, I really do. I hate them, I hate them, I hate them. And he said, good. And it pulled me up And I looked at him and I said, Kerry, what do you mean good, dude? Didn't you hear what I said? I hate those sons of bitches. And he said, yeah, that's great. He said, you know, when I first met you, you didn't care enough about people to hate them. And that pulled me up. And I had to think about that, and I had to think about it a lot. And the truth of the matter is, he was right. I was a totally self-absorbed man. I had not the interest in my fellows nor the investment in them to hate them. You know, they were kind of like an inconvenience. Hatred is good, you know, in some cases. I was invested enough in them to hate them. And otherwise, for most people in my life, it was, I just didn't care. I was apathetic toward them, disinterested in them. Self-seeking will slip away. We gain interest in our fellows and other people. We want to be part of something. We want to be creative rather than destructive. Our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change when we're doing this. Fear of people and of economic insecurity will leave us. We will intuitively know how to handle situations that used to baffle us. Now that's a big one, because I've spent a good deal of my life wondering if what I'm doing is right. You know, wondering if this is the right way to handle this, wondering if this is going to work out well, wondering if it means anything. And then finally, we'll suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. Now, I don't want to come across sounding like a preacher on this thing, because I'm not one, and you know, I don't know how the universe works and the mechanics of karma and all of that good stuff. But I do know if I do my bit and the next right thing and what I'm supposed to be doing for myself, things work out. They don't always work out the way I want them, but they always work out. There's a conclusion to things. There's a resolution to things. And I don't have to have it my way. And maybe that is God, the universe, karma, Lord Krishna, I don't know who it is, doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. Have we mentioned that faith without works is dead? I think I have. But into action. You walk the walk. You do things. Working with others. Which is the final chapter that you were assigned for this. The things that are most important is work. The thing that is most important is working with others. Carry the message to other alcoholics, because we have to give it away to keep it. That's how it works. In the early days of AA, the members in Bill's peers at the time of Bill and Dr. Bob pulling this thing together, they went out looking for drunks to help. They didn't sit around waiting for somebody to wander into the local AA club or to call and have them come on a 12-step call. They went looking for them. They went to hospitals. They went to jails. Even back in the days of the Washingtonians and the Oxfords, the guys who helped Debbie Thatcher sought him out. He was getting ready to be sent away for a while. He was in court about to be convicted, and they said, let us take him. We can work with him. We can get him sober. And the judge agreed. Carrying the message to other alcoholics, giving it a way to keep it, is important. Bill Wilson hammered on the idea constantly, when all else fails, help someone else. When nothing else is going on in your life, carry the message to another alcoholic. When you don't have a job and you don't know how you're going to pay the rent, help someone else. Go talk to someone else. Help them get sober, and things may work out for you. Intervention 101, circa 1939. If you're going to help somebody, learn what you can about the new guy. If you can find out something about him, what's going on, what kind of problems he has, some way that you can relate to him on a personal level, from your experience to his, that's always helpful. That's helpful in counseling. When apart from 12-step recovery, if someone comes into your office, anything you know about them or can find out about them is helpful to what you're doing. If you can get families input, friends input, if you can find out about their arrest record, their police records, I ask them questions. Are you married? What kind of job do you have? Where do you live? Have you been married before? Do you have any kids? Are you gay? Are you straight? Personal questions like that too. But, you have to do it tactfully, and you have to be able to, employ some interview techniques if you're doing that professionally. If you're going out on a 12-step call, when you talk to someone, approach him non-judgmentally. You don't want to come in there. I went on a 12-step call in just between Odessa and Big Springs, Texas, one time. And it was during a time of the year in the springtime when New Mexico was blowing through that part of the world for a visit, and there were huge dust storms coming up out of the west and what have you. And so I was with another guy from the local Alano Club, and we were going out into the countryside to a guy had called and wanted some help, and me and this dude Keith, we were both new in sobriety. He fairly new. He had a little over a year, and I was coming up on a year. And away we went to see this guy. And we found the place, and this is in the days before GPS and cell phones, but we managed to find the place. And we went up on the porch and knocked on the door. And there was a little old granny lady standing there, and it might be my, fertile imagination, but it seems to me that she had her hair in a bun and had knitting needles in her hand. But that could just be me romanticizing the memory. What I do know is that she was little and old, and she reminded me of Granny on the Beverly Hillbillies. So in we went, and she said, "You the boys from AA?" And we said, "Yes." And she says, well, he's back there in the back, and back yonder in the bedroom. We said, "Thank you." And as I was walking off, I heard her say, "But if you really want to help that MF, you'll put a bullet in his head." And I thought, Jeebus. It caught me off guard. She did not think much of our ability to be helpful to him. But me and Keith, we went back there to talk to him. He asked us, we were the boys from AA too, and we said, yes, we were. And he said, have y'all got any medicine with you? And I asked him, what do you mean medicine? He said, well, something to drink, something for my nerves. Do you have, which was also common back in the day, that, AA members would, give a tweaking guy a drink so that it would mellow him out where he could talk and listen. But we didn't have any whiskey on us, and we didn't have any Valium. And he looked at us and said, well, what effing good are you? I don't have anything to do with you boys. Get out of here. And so we did. We left. But you know what? We left sober. And on the way back to Odessa, we had pretty good talk. And we stopped and got some dinner and, stuff like that. So we came out of it sober. We didn't get much done with the guy we went to see, the guy on the 12-step call, the one we were hoping to intervene on. But that's all right. Sometimes you do and sometimes you don't. If you're going to be successful, if you can pick your time to work with someone, it's usually at the end of a spree, when they're coming off of and they don't feel good, and they don't have options. Generally speaking, if a guy can go on drinking and partying, he's not going to call you anyway. But when you do talk to people, approach them non-judgmentally. Don't come down harsh on them. Describe the fellowship in your experience. Don't force yourself on people if they don't want to talk to you. If, like our boy, wanted us to get the F out of there, just get the F out of there. So we did. But if the person you want to see wants to talk, let him. And you know what? It doesn't matter if he makes sense. It doesn't matter if what he says follows logically. None of that really matters. What matters is that you're there with him and you support him. Sometimes what we say isn't really all that important either. A little self-disclosure. When I made my first 12-step meeting ever, and it wasn't AA, and it wasn't NA, I was at Palmer Drug Abuse Program, and people didn't know me, and they didn't seem to want anything from me, which was kind of handy because I didn't have much. I don't remember any of the wonderful things that they had to say. And I have been in hundreds of 12-step meetings, better than 1,000 12-step meetings. You know, I've been around for a while. And I don't remember everything that was said. But what I do remember is there were people there who didn't seem to want anything from me, who didn't know me, who didn't ask me for anything, but they tried to give me something. And that stuck with me. They had something that was important to them, and they were willing to share it to me. And that's the thing that I want to give to other people. I want them to know that I'm here, I'll share, I want to help, and I will help if you give me a chance. And they can take that. They can take that or leave that. It's not my call. It's entirely up to them. Do not try to convince anyone of the existence of God. Don't turn it into into a conversion thing. The main thing is to convince people through our behavior, through the walk that we walk and things like that, that it's okay to believe in a higher power. And if you're willing to believe that there's a power greater than yourself and you're willing to live by these principles, then you'll do fine. You don't have to eat a live chicken on your first visit. In reality, when we are taking the program of AA, the 12-step program, out into the world and assisting other people, we're giving it away to keep it. And in reality, that's helping us more than it's helping him. It's helping him too, which is good, but mostly is how members of AA stay sober. I was told there is no such thing as a bad 12-step call if you return from it sober. And I've had a bad one. I hadn't been sober very long in Palmer Drug Abuse Program in the wilds of Pasadena, Texas, when there was a welder that I'd worked with a few times. I was a welder back in those days. Anyway, he and I had worked together on several jobs, and he was a weirdo. He had I mean that in with a tone of pure admiration. We were coming out of a plant one time, and we had some contraband on us, and the security guard was gonna give us a hassle about looking in our lunch boxes and stuff, seeing if we had purloined anything, which we had, of course. But this guy, can't remember his name. It seemed like it was Griffin, but I'm not sure. He had a an artificial leg. He was a veteran. He lost his leg in combat in Vietnam. Anyway, so he got to work in the fabrication area. He couldn't go up in a pipe rack or anything like that, but he could stay on the ground and weld. Anyway, to make a long story short, when the security guard came over, he turned his leg sideways, so it looked like it had been wrenched out of off his kneecap. His boot was sticking out at a right angle to his thigh, and he said, "I think I hurt myself." And the guard freaked out and let us go. But anyway, this was the guy that has nothing to do with what I'm about to tell you. It just popped into my head. I went over to his apartment to tell him, that I had got religion. I was like Abby Thatcher, I've discovered a way, that's to stay sober and it's satisfying and yada yada yada. And we went in to talk to him, and he said, "So you're not getting high at all?" And he found that very hard to believe. So do a lot of other people in my life. But he found it very hard to believe that I was not getting high. And he questioned me pretty thoroughly about what I was doing and how I was doing it and everything. Then he said, I might be interested in doing this, because I've really been having some trouble with drinking and, doing the meth and everything. He said, but I've been chilling with this weed. And then he brought out some Maui Wowie, and then next thing I know, I was chilling with it too. So that was a bad 12-step call. It was the only one that I've ever had that was that bad, but I had to set a new sobriety date and start over. What's this about Good Samaritans? Not only do you give it away to keep it, but if you read working with others, into action and working with others, they're talking about things like loaning money, bailing people out of jail, allowing folks to live in your home, taking the message to the alcoholic's family members. If the identified CD person don't want to work with you, work with their family members. Walking the walk, being that good Samaritan who stops to help a stranger because they need help for no other reason. That's asking a lot, and generally you don't see that kind of thing happening much in AA anymore. And we're not the ones, by we I mean AA members are not the ones who make first contact with the person, with the new person anymore. Actually, a lot of what used to be called 12-step works takes place in counseling centers in professional people who work in the addiction treatment field are the first contact people, and we take them in and we put them in detox and we sober them up, and then we send them out into 12-step programs as a support system apart from what we're doing with them. So I am of two minds about this. I mean, I experienced going into people's homes, and and I experienced taking people into my home. I'm not real wild about doing that anymore. It's actually a lot of trouble, and it doesn't always work out. Bad things can happen with that, but that's coming from the people who wrote the big book, and this was the practice in their day. Another point that they make is we do not hide from the world. We can't hide from the world. And there's a story in this particular reading assignment, or an analogy, really, not a story. He said if we went to the North Pole or Greenland or wherever, we still couldn't ride from it. Some Eskimo might show up with the fifth, and it'd all be over. So we have to live in the world. This is where we live. And this isn't about isolating yourself or sequestering yourself into some ivory tower of some sort. We interact with the world. We live our lives in the world. We do what we do in the world. When we're working with other people, we are careful never to show intolerance or hatred of drinking as an institution. If you do that, if you come, this is a common experience for alcoholics, for people who use drugs, etc. We have been preached at from every angle and sideways. People have, told us why what we're doing is messed up, how messed up we are as people to be doing what we're doing, etc., and so forth. You don't want to come across as a crusader. In fact, you should refuse to be a crusader. Your role as an AA member, as a recovering person, is to be a helper, as to be a supporter, as to be a crutch for the recovering person, not someone who's hell-bent on changing the world. So you avoid the politics of temperance and crusadership. And finally, after all, our problems were of our own making. Bottles were only a symbol. And besides, by the time you reach this stage in your recovery, or by the time an individual reaches this stage in recovery, they've stopped fighting anybody or anything. They have to. We have to. Surrender to win, Father Martin, and you'll get a chance to experience him before this class is over, some video. He's dead now, but, still got the video. Said that an alcoholic is like a prize fighter who never wins a fight. And every day he goes to the ring, and every day he gets the hell beat out of him. And then one day he's down on his hands and knees, crawling toward the ring, wondering to himself how he's going to avoid getting beat up today. And an AA member comes up and whispers in his ear, "Don't get in the ring. That's how you avoid getting beat up today. Stop fighting it. Quit trying to control it. Recognize that this isn't your bag, that you have to jump out of this, man. Surrender." And you surrender to win. And then you get recovery. And recovery feels good. When I ended our lecture in the Big Book last week, I talked about the 12 steps not being there to fill you up. They're there to make you hungry. And recovery should do that. As you move forward in recovery, you should get a little excited about your life. You should invest more in yourself and invest more in the people around you. You may come into recovery thinking about avoiding something, getting out of trouble, getting out of danger, and things like that. But as you see your life's improving, and as you see the circumstances that you're in being more resolvable, as you see a quality of life that you hadn't known before, you should be moving forward now in a positive way. And not regretting the past or wishing to shut the door on it, or even worse, wishing to go back to it. And that brings me to Darius Rucker and his line from Wagon Wheel, "Ain't turning back to living that old life no more." And that's what we want out of this, right? A new life. Okay. Well, that pretty much concludes the third episode in the Big Book saga. We'll be back for the next episode for the next week in Module 2. And I hope this is helpful. I hope you find these little lectures helpful to understanding what's going on in the big book. And yeah, I'm tired. Bye.